The purpose of Wealth Talk is to educate, inform, and hopefully entertain you on the subject of building your wealth. WealthBuilders recommends you should always take independent financial, tax, or legal advice before making any decisions around your finances.
Welcome to episode 178 of Wealth Talk. My name is Christian Rodwell, the Membership Director for WealthBuilders, and I'm joined today by our founder, Mr. Kevin Whelan. Hello, Kevin.
Hello. Good to be with you again on this festive day.
Yes, it is indeed. Only less than 2 weeks until Christmas now, and this will be our last podcast episode of 2022.
You made me panic me there. I thought you were going to say this is our last podcast ever.
No way.
Don't make me nervous, Chris. Come on.
Not at all. I think we're nearly at our 4-year anniversary, which will be early next year. So no, we're not stopping anytime soon. And once again, thank you to everyone listening who has supported us throughout this year and left us very kind feedback, reviews and comments. We really, really appreciate it.
And by the way, it is Christmas. It's a season of goodwill. If you've been enjoying the podcast, and I meet people, and they say, I'm loving the podcast. So where's my review? So take the time, just do a little review. If you like it, if you don't like it, tell us personally and we'll change it for you. But if you are liking the content, the challenge with it, of course, Chris, is a bit of a random walk around the whole wealth story, which means you can't use the podcast as a strategic way to build your wealth, but it is a kind of a nice little interlude, isn't it, from time to time, just to see what the old geezer and the young geezer are talking about, and if they've got any guests worth listening to. Today, it's just the ramblings of an old man.
Oh, well, hopefully a little bit more than that. I know we often get feedback saying, absolutely loving the podcast, been binging it, and I've been executing everything that you guys are talking about. So hopefully we're spreading a little bit of magic dust out there to help people build more wealth. But today we are talking about keeping it in the family. Yeah. And we're just going to have a little discussion. And it's kind of a bit of a prelude because we've talked about Wealth Builders for Families, but we are ever so close now to having that program ready. And that will be delivered early part of next year.
Mm. Well, look, we all know this is the time, for being with families. And interestingly enough, I'm going to be a granddad for the second time. And my middle son has just popped the question in New York. So he'll be arriving anytime soon, actually. So that's all good news. And it's wonderful, isn't it, when your family are changing and growing around you. But it made me think, and I posted recently, Chris, about, the real challenge for our young people, the real mix, almost like a deathly mix of things that are working against them to create their wealth. And, I consider myself fortunate as a baby boomer that many things were kind of lined up to help us, across the piece, big final salary schemes for many, jobs for life to create that security. All of those things were there. Not that I followed that path, of course I didn't. But for many people, they became financially secure and maybe even independent without having to do much, without having to learn much, without having to participate much in their own wealth building journey. That can't be the case now. So I want to dive into those things a bit to try and help parents think, because the big challenge is if all the deck is stacked up against our younger people, and we'll talk about that, who's going to unstack the deck? In the end, does it end up being bank of mum and dad? Do we always come to the rescue with the bank account? Or are there other alternatives? And I want to advocate that there are some lessons to be learned, some myths to be dispelled. And I want to almost unwave a magic wand, if you like, to dispel myths that really make my blood boil and help parents to learn what to do to be a good steward for the next generation, rather than let the kids learn the lessons that they perhaps didn't learn because they didn't need to learn them. Yeah. So maybe we can dive into that. So it's always interesting dispelling myths and kind of working out how did that even get to be accepted as a home truth when in fact it's an old wives' tale. So let's get into that, Chris.
Yeah. And of course, in the last 10 years, the onset of social media, which has a double-edged sword. There's obviously great aspects to that in terms of being able to spread information much more freely and easily. But of course, not all of that information is correct. And so the younger generation, they're going to pick it up from somewhere, right? And often they might be picking up things which, as you say, are more myths and actually not backed by solid principles.
Well, yeah, and that's a great point, Chris, because at Wealth Builders, I do my best to work on principles. I don't try and give opinions. I'm not trying to be controversial from an opinions point of view. I'm willing to be, willing to discuss it with anybody who's got a different view. But I think the problem with social media for me is not that the myths get compounded, which they do, but it's the fact that we're living in comparison economics now. So it's so easy to see the apparent success of people when you're comparing yourself to other people. And that comparison leads to many psychological actions. And we see it in our wealth builder journey, Chris. We see some people start the journey and others get a quick start. They find an easy strategy that works for them. It clicks pretty much straight away. And those people who click straight away, they're posting, aren't they? They're saying, this is my next property. This is my next business. This is my next investment. They're doing things. And some people who aren't getting there as quickly feel bad. There's an emotion attached to that journey. And we try and help that by having coaching calls every single month and encouraging people to show up, because the wealth building journey is not one that you can follow with milestones that just simply roll on. You sometimes got to wait. And particularly at the beginning in your wealth journey, you've got to wait many months at the beginning because you're learning things, you're discovering things. You've got to get to a place where you can find your flow. And for many of us, we've been educated out of our flow. So in other words, there's a absolutely fantastic TED Talk. I could not rave enough about it. Maybe you could put a link to it in the show notes, Chris, which is Sir Ken Robinson. I mean, it's probably the most listened to TED Talk almost in history, I think. Oh, man, it's amazing. And the principle of the lesson in the TED Talk is that the school system has educated the creativity out of our kids. In other words, creativity isn't valued highly, but wealth building is about creativity. And I think what happens then is when the lack of creativity occurs and the old wives' tales set in, people start to believe, I can't. I'm too old. I'm too young. I haven't got enough money to get started. I haven't got enough time to get started. You and I have heard this thousands and thousands of times. And all of them are a fallacy, because wealth building is about taking small, consistent steps every single month. That's all you have to do. And everybody can make one step. And if you can make one step, you can make a second step. But hey, I'm not going to go down that path today. I want to get to the myths, Chris.
Right.
Because it's the myths that just seem to get accepted as, this is true. And it's absolutely not true.
Okay. Right. Where should we begin then?
Well, I think we should begin with the idea that, well, for example, let's begin with the idea that, you should buy and hold money in the stock market to retire, right? So this whole idea of saving money as soon as you can to build a nest egg to then draw an income in retirement is a complete myth, because it doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is because there's no responsibility, no creativity, no participation by anybody on that journey. The only thing that's happening is a product has been created, the product has been sold, and the product is perpetuated in fees that keeps a hugely profitable financial industry. It's an industry, it's huge, that perpetuates this myth that you should just buy and hold diversified stocks and hope for the best. It's kind of they call it the buy and hold strategy. And I think it would be better named, it was the buy, hold, and hope strategy, because the challenge is you can't wait till you build a pot. Because when you get a pot, let's say you got a reasonable pot, most people don't get more than $250,000 because they start later. Our younger people are starting work later. Historically, getting a university degree was a guarantee of a job. Now it isn't. You need an MA. And then, you're 1 in 50 people trying to get the same job. So while there's a shortage of jobs, there are still a dearth of jobs for our graduates. So it's getting tougher and tougher and tougher. And then there's the student debt. So I went to university, didn't pay for it. And consequently, that was not a handbrake on my wealth, if you see what I mean. I didn't have to make those payments. But of course, student debt is part of life now. And often people coming out of university with 50 grand in debt. So that's a lead weight around a shackle, isn't it, around your leg before you even get started. And then what do? You do get a job and then you put some money in a pension. You don't know why, you just told you do. So you put some money in and you just default your way into putting money into a pot. You have no idea what it's doing. You got no idea how to make it improve. You got no creativity of your own in play. And then you move to another job in the future. And then you leave these disparate pots. Maybe sometimes you might consolidate them. But the same problem exists, that it's a challenge to build that pot. And increasingly, the participation rates, in other words, the number of young people who are actually participating in the pension is getting less. And that's one of the reasons why the government's forced it. They've forced the hand of the employee to actually pay into their own pension. And then they think, oh, well, the government's paying, or the government's encouraging me. My employer's paying a bit and I'm paying a bit. I should be all right. But they don't do the maths. So, you save your way, you get to a decent sum, call it $500,000 just for a number, which is a big number for most people. Well, what then? Right? So you get to 60 and you got £500,000. Now, by the way, I'm ranting, I know, but hey, hopefully you can draw the threads of this together. What do you reckon the average age of first-time buyer is now, Chris?
Well, late 30s, I would guess.
Yeah, 37. So the average age first-time buyer is 37. Right, cost of living crisis, interest rates high. What do you think they're going to do with their mortgage? Are they going to go 20 years? Going to go, Kev, you've written a book called Save a Fortune, How to Completely Eliminate Your Mortgage Fast. Right, I paid mine off in 7. Are they going to pay their mortgage off in 7? No. They're going to take on their mortgage 30 years, 40 years, right? So they're still going to be paying a mortgage in their 70s, right? Most. Now, what can they do about that? Well, it's difficult unless you're thinking through the cost of this. And then, so you pay your mortgage off at 60, say, and then you don't have that expense, and then you got a pot of £500,000. And then all of your life, then you've been working hard. You get to 60, and you've now got to create a life of certainty from an asset that's fundamentally uncertain. Right? Because is the stock market certain?
No.
Does it give us a predictable income? It doesn't. You're investing in companies, but most people are investing in default funds. And for many of them, those funds switch to cash as they get older for the reason that they were built, the products, this is the thing, more often than not, these are products built for compliance and for profit, not to try and help people build their wealth. So I think there's a misalignment between the objectives of the people selling or putting together this to make a wealthy profit, getting paid year in, year out, whether the market goes up or down, and always getting paid before you get paid. It's just a tragic waste of an understanding. And more often than not, the advisors will say, you've got £500,000, you've done well, you get 4% on your money. But it isn't 4% on the money. They suggest you take 4%, 20 grand, right? £500,000 gives you 20 grand. Well, that's not a lifestyle that for many would be a worthwhile aspiration. More often than not, it's a cut dramatically in income. But it's not a 4% guarantee. It's, well, what if you get a stock market crash? How do you recover from that? If you get a 50% stock market crash, you need 100% on your money just to get back to where you were before. So there's no magical compounding. There's no risk mitigation. So as a consequence, I think most people live a life of scarcity and uncertainty. And I think that's a tragedy. And I would like to do my best to help people understand that and to not fall into that trap, not fall into the myth that says you should buy and hold and wait and everything's going to be okay, because it isn't. Because the big robber here is not the financial fees, although that's, don't get me on that soapbox on the fees. The big robber is the creativity. So when younger people don't participate in their own wealth, they don't learn anything. And all of that wasted education, all of that potential knowledge that's created around them is not shared, because most parents are following an old imprint. They're following the final salary imprint. They're following the imprint of the past, and they're not equipping their children of all ages, whether they're 8 or 28, they're not equipping them with the skills. So what I'd like to do is encourage parents to secure their own oxygen mask first, sure, but then to help their kids or be prepared to think about how they could help them. And Wealth Builders for Families will be deliberately designed to cater for parents who've got children of any age, including oldies like me with, kids getting married and kids having babies, and so I'll give you a breather to interject with my ramblings, but you get the point, Chris. It's not stacked up for wealth at the moment.
Yeah, no, I'll let you pause and take a sip. But it's a controversial view, right, that you make there about the stock market. So there will possibly be listeners now who say, well, I've invested in the markets, it's done me well and I've built wealth through the market. So we talk about diversification. Wealth Builders is built on the 7 pillars principle there, that there are 7 different asset classes, investments being one of those. So where do investments sit? They do have a place in wealth building.
They do have a place, but I'm saying, Chris, I thank you for the sort of mediation of my tone there, but it's not about me saying the stock market doesn't have a place. I mean, look, you think about what the stock market is. It's a marketplace where businesses offer you a share in the value of their company. Now, historically, that came from the industrial age, so there's a massive movement in wealth in terms of epochal changes, things that fundamentally shift an epoch, an era, a complete change from landed gentry to industrialists. And that's what happened, and the UK were a powerhouse for that. And then there was a transition from industrialists to shareholders. And we became a nation of shareholders and homeowners. And I think that's great. And I genuinely do think the stock market originally was fantastic because it gave you a share of value. So you could look at companies and say, I like what that company does. And I'd like to participate in its value. And of course, if you choose well and you choose diversely, there's nothing wrong with the principle of buying valuable companies. That's what Warren Buffett does. And his entire business is based on that philosophy. However, most people don't buy for value. They buy in default funds. They buy into funds that they don't know what's going on. They didn't choose the company. They didn't choose the dividend. They didn't choose anything in particular. They didn't choose something that was aligned with their own personal preferences, whether they were in favor of environmental friendly things, whether they were in favor of green energy, whether they're in favor of electric cars. Nobody's investing, or very few people are investing in line with their principles. They're investing in line with a default view, where that view is being created by somebody else for making profit. Okay, so I think it's not that the stock market is bad, but historically, Chris, there was an epochal change there as well. Originally, lots of changes that people may not know about, but we moved. Look, two massive ones. Fundamentally, Big stuff, but maybe isn't thought about. Number one, we came off the gold standard in the 70s, okay, when our currency was linked to the amount of gold that we had. As soon as you move from gold back to fiat currency, then everything is about sentiment. Everything is about quantitative easing. We have no control over the value of our money. And we saw that massively, didn't we, in recent political uncertainties? We saw the pound plummet. Now, when the pound plummets, that affects the buying power of your money, not just in the UK, but abroad. Well, if you think about retirement as a journey where the destination is retirement land, and then you need a currency to buy your life beyond that, nobody knows their exchange rate. They don't know how much am I going to get for the money I've saved in my pension, because there's no link to value anymore. It's all linked to sentiment. So sentiment drives everything now. So fiat currency, sentiment, shares now on sentiment. It used to be a share was share of value. Now it's just a share price. And the price becomes everything. So I think investment in the stock market can be done, but can be done well. And it can be done by understanding that income can flow from investments in the stock market if you choose the stock as well. It also means you can put in risk mitigation techniques, because the other myth then in the stock market is just hold on, just roll the dice. Well, I don't know about you, Chris, but as soon as you use the word roll the dice, go again, roll your gains, there's no compounding then taking place, because you can lose as quickly as you can gain. So where you can only compound when something adds on top of something else. So I hear people saying, well, I invest in the stock market because it compounds over time. No, it doesn't. Things only compound if they add value upon value upon value upon value. So the concept of compound interest I get, because you earn interest. You don't lose the interest, you earn interest. You don't lose the interest, you earn more interest. That's compound interest. There's no compounding in the stock market. The only compounding going on, frankly, in the stock market is the compounding of the fees being charged, which are paid year in, year out, year in, year out, irrespective of whether the market works or not. So I think there's a gap in knowledge that we're trying to bridge and get people to participate in the stock market for sure, but to do it in line with their own DNA, with who they are as a person, who's their wealth dynamic, what do they feel, where is value coming in the world. We saw you interviewed Andrew Craig recently, did you not?
Yes, that's right. Yes.
And he had a view, and that's an interesting view. I'm not saying it's the right or wrong view for anybody, but it's a view. Invest in the whole world for one. He's got a big view about biotech, and that it's in the end what comes to our rescue is the creativity of people. Finding solutions to things. So this circles me back exactly to Ken Robinson, which is creativity. Chris has been educated out of us all. We don't want to be wrong, so therefore we take solace in the old wives' tales that we've been told are true, when in fact are untrue. And I want to bring creativity back into wealth building. Creativity of the parents, showing, not teaching, because look, why don't they teach us at school? Why? Because the teachers haven't learned that lesson. They're still part of the old pattern, aren't they? No disrespect intended to teachers. I don't disrespect anybody for the career choice they make. But a teacher is not living a program of building wealth in the stock market. They're living a program of a final salary pension. And that's great, because that can give you security. But the kids are not going to be teachers. So the teachers are not well equipped because they haven't learned the lesson of the difference between trading time for money in a pension and building wealth through creativity and building wealth through the ownership of assets. So the best people to teach are the parents, but often the parents need to learn some new lessons. And part of the whole wealth builder philosophy for new lessons, Chris, is to get the parents to begin to think about a new epoch for themselves, a new chapter for themselves. So in stage 1 of the Wealth Builder Journey and Academy, tell people what we do, Chris, as far as the family wealth name is concerned.
Yes, so we get people thinking about their family wealth name, their family wealth business. And that includes really sitting down with everybody around the table and discussing names that are meaningful, memories, and creating a logo, creating a name that everyone is involved in. And we've seen such an array from children's handprints to the family dog, in coats of arms and all sorts of wonderful logos there. But it really brings it to life. It makes it something that everybody's connected to and meaningful. And that's what drives it on and really creating that legacy.
Yeah. So if you as a parent, if you're listening now, then you've got the chance to be a pioneer of a new generation of wealthy people in your family. And I mean this in the spirit of wealth, true wealth, which is, responsible, mature, sharing, giving, all of those emotions, all of those very important qualities that are needed. It's not selfishness, it's selflessness. It's how do you create more value for others? And this is all part of the Wealth Builder principles. The Declaration of Independence, for example, encapsulates those. So we want to try and lead that thought process of creating the family wealth business and then creating the concept of stewardship, because stewardship is the opposite of selfishness. Stewardship says, I don't own this. I'm just taking care of it for the next generation. That's stewardship. It means you believe that your role is not selfish wealth. That's another one. I won't get into that biblical one, but money is the root of all evil. Well, we've heard that one before, right? And of course, that wasn't what was said by Paul. It was money, or the love of money is the root of all evil. But money is just an idea, and an idea is a representation of you. So if you had more money, you'd be the same person. So, all money is just an idea. So let's take the idea and say, well, how do we build a fantastic family experience? And how do we build a principle of giving and sharing and growing and involving our children at whatever age they are so they can participate in seeing things, and you can learn some new things about how you could do that, so that in the future, whatever you call your family wealth business, and I just love the names and I just love how they come up with them. It's wonderful. I was talking to a guy just a couple of days ago and talking about this very concept. And I said, and I'd like you to think about it. He said, I've got it already. I said, what do you mean you got it already? And it was a New Zealand, I can't remember the name now, but he's a Kiwi guy. And the name was just instantly there. And it meant good fortune. There's a whatever it is. I can't remember the name exactly, but that was his name, not my name, right? So mine's Wealth Builders together with the clasping hands, the 5 clasping hands around the outside of the circle, and yours being Rod Wellbeing, right? So all of these things are deeply personal and not for judgment, but the benefit there is you're creating the stewardship idea. So should we go for another myth?
Okay.
Am I all right? I think I'm ranting a bit today.
Let's squeeze one more in then. Yeah.
One more in. Yeah. Well, look, increasingly, we're seeing the biggest growth in the bank. There's a new bank in the UK. It's rapidly approaching huge status. And it's the Bank of Mum and Dad. And the Bank of Mum and Dad are coming to the rescue in all sorts of ways as the baby boomers who've got some wealth pass some of that on. But I think there's a principle here, and it's an interesting one. It's going to be a controversial one, Chris, so I make no apology for this one. Often when we talk about the legacy, and I'll write a piece about the Bank of Mum and Dad, okay, and what you can do about it and how you can be a bank and be it well, but it all comes from the point of stewardship. So whether you provide money while you're alive, most people don't. They provide money when they pass. And without the use of trusts and without the use of wisdom, money gets distributed, and then money gets dispelled, and then the value gets destroyed. That's what happens. It's built in to the very fabric of pretty much all the major Western economies. In other words, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations, clogs to clogs in 3 generations. Somebody wise builds the money, the next generation enjoy the money, and the next ones don't see any link between how the money was created or the values that were used to create it, and the money gets completely used up, consumed. And I think that's a principle that's not correct. I think a better principle to think about anyway is to think about, it's not what you leave your kids, what you leave within them. It's principles of teachings. It's principles of values that if you can teach them wise things and say, we're building a stewardship fund in Rodwell Being, in WealthBuilders Together, in Waymari, it might be even, I think the name. But whatever the name was, it's your family crest, your family name. And you're building that not to support just you, not to support your direct kids, but the kids of the kids and the kids of the kids and the kids of the kids. In other words, like the big families did in America, the Rockefellers, for example, you create an institutional process now. And it doesn't have to be massive, it doesn't be multi millions. It can be hundreds of thousands. And most people have got that now just with property values, that the wealth can be protected through the use of trusts, and then rules of engagement, which I call a family charter. And we can help you write a family charter, and that charter will set the rules where those rules allow money to be given. Right? So, for example, money on weddings, money on babies. We buy a new car for anyone who's got a baby because they always need that extra space in there and so on. Anyway, you create your own rules, give you some guidance on that. But in addition to that, it's also about giving back. So if you want to set up a business, you can borrow the money from the trust to set the business up, but you pay back. So it's not a gift. It's an endowment of, the values. And that's what I think is critical. That's what I think should be done. And the myth then of just leaving a great legacy, what does that mean? I think leaving a great stewardship is a much better concept. So anyway, spirit of goodwill and all that, Chris. I'm looking forward to the festive period. I know that you haven't got a massive family. So where are you sharing your Christmas this year?
I'm actually doing some volunteering on Christmas Day. So I'll be helping people enjoy their family Christmas. Well, not a family, but those without a famly having a Christmas lunch.
I applaud you for that. And that again shows some great values, giving of yourself, and hopefully you have a great one. And let's wish all of our listeners a fantastic festive period as well, wherever they are in the world, and whatever their religion. So I hope you just enjoy the celebrations, and we'll be back with a bang in 2023 for 179.
Yeah, we'll take a couple of weeks off over Christmas to just enjoy ourselves, recharge the batteries, and we advise that you will do the same too. So once again, thank you so much for your support, for your ears this year, listening to us, and we very much look forward to continuing the journey with you in 2023. Kevin, we'll be back, same time, same place next year.
Until 2023, my friend. See ya.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget that we are constantly updating our resources inside the WealthBuilders membership site to help you create, build, and protect your wealth. Head over to wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership right now for free access. That's wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership.